I'm Cassandra Mitchell, 32, and just survived another Mitchell family dinner. My brother Richard, corporate golden boy, was boasting about his exclusive year-end gala when he looked at me with that trademark smirk. "Don't feel bad, Cass. You're not classy enough for the year-end party anyway," he announced to the table. I just smiled and replied, "My party's somewhere else." The table fell silent. He doesn't know it yet, but that childhood pattern of undermining me ends now. Richard's suspicious glance told me he sensed something different this time. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated by family. Trust me, what happens next will show you exactly why staying true to yourself pays off in ways they'll never see coming. Growing up in the Mitchell family meant one thing above all else: appearances matter. My father, Howard, a third-generation investment banker, and my mother, Patricia, a socialite from old money, created a household where status wasn't just important, it was everything. My brother Richard, 2 years older, was the golden child from day one. He checked all the boxes: athletic, conventionally ambitious, and eager to follow our father's footsteps. My sister Jennifer, 2 years younger than me, became the perfect daughter who mastered the art of pleasing our parents while secretly resenting it. Then there was me. I was always different. When Richard joined Junior Golf Club, I was collecting scrap materials to make jewelry. When Jennifer took cotillion classes, I was sketching business plans in my notebook. I wasn't rebellious, just wired differently than what the Mitchell family blueprint allowed. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When I was 10, my parents planned a birthday party at our country club. I'd invited my whole class, something I'd never done before as a shy kid. The day before, Richard's soccer team made the regional finals scheduled at the same time. Without discussion, my party was canceled. "Everyone will understand," Mom said, squeezing my shoulder. "Your brother's achievement is important for the whole family." By 14, I'd started selling my handmade jewelry to classmates. When I proudly showed my parents the $300 I'd earned in a month, Dad chuckled. "That's cute, honey. But don't get too distracted from your studies. These little hobbies won't pay the bills." Mom added, "Richard's internship at your father's firm is the kind of experience that builds real careers." College admissions came, and I wanted to major in business entrepreneurship. Dad refused to pay unless I switched to finance. Mitchell women can work in acceptable fields: law, finance, maybe medicine. But this crafty business nonsense stops now. I pretended to comply, enrolled in finance, then secretly changed majors after the first semester. The family didn't discover my deception until junior year, when Dad's colleague mentioned seeing my name in a university business competition article. The confrontation was nuclear. "You've embarrassed the entire family," Dad thundered. "This isn't how Mitchells behave." Mom cried about my betrayal, while Richard watched with smug satisfaction. Jennifer remained silent, eyes down. I was cut off financially, but had anticipated this, having saved from my growing side business and secured scholarships. The estrangement lasted through graduation, where none of my family attended. The silence continued for almost a year afterward, while I poured everything into launching Casscraft Designs, my sustainable home goods company. The reconciliation, if you could call it that, only came when a small feature about promising young entrepreneurs appeared in a business magazine with my photo. Suddenly, Mom was calling. "We've always supported your independence, darling. When are you coming for dinner?" Dad mentioned something about the family always being there for each other. Richard sent a congratulatory email that somehow managed to reference his recent promotion twice. I returned cautiously to family gatherings, hopeful but wary. The pattern had been established early. My achievements would always be secondary, my choices always questioned, my path always viewed as less than. But part of me still yearned for their approval, a weakness I hadn't yet outgrown. 5 years after that tentative family reunion, Casscraft Designs was no longer a fledgling business, but a rising star in the eco-friendly home goods market. My bamboo kitchenware line had been picked up by 3 regional chains, and my recycled fabric throw pillows were being featured in design blogs. A profile in Sustainable Business Monthly described me as the fresh face of eco-conscious entrepreneurship. The business I'd built from scratch now employed 27 people. The Mitchell family attitude shifted as my public profile grew. Suddenly, I was included in conversations at family gatherings. Mom showed her friends my products, though she always mentioned how surprised she was at their quality. Dad stopped referring to my company as Cassandra's project and began using its actual name. Richard's change was most dramatic. My corporate executive brother, who had spent years dismissing my business acumen, now wanted to collaborate. He caught me after Sunday dinner one week, all smiles and business casual enthusiasm. "Cass, I've been thinking," he said, swirling imported scotch in a crystal tumbler. "You've got a good thing going, but I could really help you scale. My network is full of serious investors looking for interesting opportunities. Despite years of conditioning to doubt myself around my family, I'd built enough success to recognize my company's value. Still, that old desire for family approval nagged at me. What if Richard was genuinely proud and wanted to help? What if we could heal our relationship through professional respect? "I'd be open to introductions," I said cautiously, "though we're not actively seeking investment right now." Richard's smile widened. "Perfect. There's someone specific you should meet. Bradley Wilson, brilliant guy, manages a private equity fund focused on sustainable brands." 2 weeks later, I was having lunch with Bradley at an overpriced steakhouse. He asked pointed questions about my manufacturing process, profit margins, and upcoming product lines. Something felt off, but I dismissed it as my usual family-triggered paranoia. I shared general information, but held back on specifics about our new biodegradable packaging technology. 3 months later, I discovered why. A competitor's catalog landed on my desk, featuring products with suspicious similarities to our confidential designs, including elements of the packaging innovation I'd mentioned to Bradley. When I researched further, I found Bradley had no private equity fund. He was the VP of Product Development at Greenlife Essentials, owned by Christopher Warren, Richard's former college roommate. I confronted Richard at my parents' anniversary dinner, pulling him into Dad's study. "You set me up," I said, showing him the catalog and Bradley's real position. "You fed my proprietary information to Chris Warren." Richard's face flashed surprise before settling into practiced innocence. "That's quite an accusation, Cass. Bradley meets with dozens of companies. Maybe your ideas just aren't as original as you think." "Cut the crap. Bradley doesn't have an investment fund. You invented that to get me to meet with him." "You're being paranoid," Richard laughed, but his eyes were cold. "This is why you've always struggled in business circles, Cass. You don't understand how relationships work." When I brought it up at dinner, expecting at least basic family loyalty, my parents exchanged glances. "Cassandra, dear," Mom sighed. "This competitive attitude is so unattractive. Richard was trying to help you network. Your brother has connections you couldn't possibly develop on your own," Dad added. "If some of your ideas overlap with other companies, that's just how business works." "They stole my designs." My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. "There you go with the drama again," Richard said with exaggerated patience. "This is exactly why serious companies would hesitate to work with you." Jennifer, who had remained silent throughout, finally spoke. "Maybe there was just a misunderstanding?" I left that dinner with perfect clarity. My family would always choose Richard's version of reality over mine, would always defend his actions while questioning my reactions. The betrayal stung worse than the potential business damage. I'd allowed hope to override experience, and it had cost me. Back at my office the next day, I called an emergency meeting with my team. We would accelerate our timeline on the new packaging technology, filing patents immediately. We implemented new confidentiality protocols and compartmentalized information access. The Richard-triggered security breach ultimately pushed us to better protect our innovations. I didn't cut contact with my family entirely. Part of me still wasn't ready for that, but I stopped sharing anything meaningful about my business. When they asked about work, I became as vague and pleasant as Jennifer had always been, offering nothing they could use against me. I had learned my lesson, or so I thought. After Richard's betrayal, I immersed myself in strengthening both my company and my resolve. The marketplace was responding positively to Casscraft's expanded product lines, and I channeled my disappointment into innovation. We developed stricter security protocols, with all team members signing enhanced confidentiality agreements. I wouldn't be caught vulnerable again. During this rebuilding phase, I met Evelyn Parker at an industry conference. At 62, Evelyn had built, scaled, and sold 3 successful companies. Unlike most keynote speakers who disappeared after their presentations, Evelyn lingered, asking thoughtful questions at smaller breakout sessions. After hearing my question about balancing growth with company culture, she approached me directly. "You're thinking about the right things," she said, without introduction. "Most people your age are just chasing funding rounds." That conversation led to coffee, which led to a mentorship that changed everything. Evelyn became my first true ally in the business world, someone who valued me for my vision rather than despite it. "Family businesses are complicated," she told me during one of our monthly meetings, after I'd finally shared the Richard situation. "But family members who sabotage your business aren't business partners, they're competitors. Treat them accordingly." Under Evelyn's guidance, I restructured company governance, creating safeguards against any future interference. We were growing faster now, catching the attention of several major retailers. When Nordum's, a nationwide department store chain, expressed interest in carrying our kitchen line, it felt like validation of everything I'd built. 6 months after the Richard incident, my sister Jennifer unexpectedly visited my office. Unlike our parents, who maintained rigid formality, or Richard, who exuded corporate slickness, Jennifer appeared genuinely humble. "Your office is amazing," she said, admiring the open floor plan and sustainable materials. "I've been following your company's growth. It's incredible what you've built, Cass." Her admiration seemed sincere, and I felt my guard lowering slightly. Jennifer had always been caught between sides in family conflicts, trying to please everyone while protecting herself. "Richard was wrong to do what he did," she continued. "I should have said something at dinner." "Why didn't you?" I asked, more curious than accusatory. "You know how they are, but I'm trying to make my own decisions now." She hesitated. "Actually, I left my job at Mom's Foundation. I'm looking for something more meaningful." After several more visits and conversations, I cautiously offered Jennifer a role in our finance department. She had an accounting degree and relevant experience, and there was something appealing about having family on my side for once. Evelyn advised caution, but didn't object outright. For 3 months, everything seemed perfect. Jennifer worked diligently, often staying late. She integrated well with the team and brought useful insights from her foundation experience. I began including her in strategy meetings, appreciating having family who finally understood my vision. Then came the morning. Our CFO, Martin, requested an urgent meeting. His face was grave as he slid a folder across my desk. "I found discrepancies," he said quietly. "Payments authorized to vendors we don't use, routed through accounts I can't trace." Over the next 72 hours, we uncovered that Jennifer had systematically embezzled nearly $50,000 through a sophisticated scheme of fake vendor accounts. The discovery couldn't have come at a worse time. Our meeting with Nordum's executives was scheduled for the following week, and we needed to show impeccable financials. I confronted Jennifer in my office after hours, laying out the evidence Martin had compiled. I expected denial, but instead, she crumpled. "I never meant for it to go this far," she sobbed. "Dad and Mom kept saying you owed the family after all they'd done for you. They said taking a little for the family investments was fair since you'd rejected their guidance. They put you up to this?" The betrayal doubled instantly. "Not exactly. They just kept talking about how selfish you were being with your success, how you'd abandoned family values. Dad mentioned how easy it would be to divert some funds given my position. She wiped her eyes. I thought if I showed them I could do it, they'd finally see me as valuable too. The timing suddenly made sense. The embezzlement began shortly after I declined to invest in my father's friend's hedge fund. When I confronted my parents, they reacted with practiced outrage. "How dare you accuse us of such things?" Mom gasped. "Jennifer has always been emotionally fragile. If she took money, that's between you and her. Perhaps if you hadn't tempted her with financial responsibility beyond her capabilities," Dad added coldly. I made the difficult decision not to press charges against Jennifer, instead having her sign a repayment agreement and confidentiality clause. To cover the financial hole before the Nordham's meeting, I liquidated my personal investment account and took out a loan against my condo. We made our presentation with balanced books, but the stress nearly broke me. Jennifer disappeared to a cousin's home in Colorado, leaving me with another painful lesson. In the Mitchell family, I would always be the villain of the story, regardless of who had wronged whom. The embezzlement episode also showed me how my parents operated through proxies, maintaining plausible deniability while orchestrating chaos. I stopped attending family gatherings altogether after that, sending polite regrets but no explanations. When I received their calls, I kept conversations brief and impersonal. I had a business to save, and couldn't afford more family-inflicted wounds. 1 year after Jennifer's betrayal, Casscraft had not only recovered but thrived. The Nordham's deal had expanded to all their locations nationwide, and our revenue had tripled. My team had grown to 45 employees, and we'd moved to a larger facility that showcased our commitment to sustainable manufacturing. An industry publication named me one of 40 under 40 business leaders transforming traditional industries. The attention brought new challenges and opportunities. Investors circled with serious offers, and larger competitors began taking notice. I'd assembled a board of directors with Evelyn's help, experienced professionals who provided genuine guidance without hidden agendas. It was during this period of growth that my father made his unexpected move. After months of minimal contact, Howard Mitchell called requesting lunch to clear the air. We met at an upscale restaurant where the maitre d' greeted him by name. Dad looked older than I remembered but still carried himself with the practiced authority of someone accustomed to deference. "Your company's making quite a splash," he began after ordering for both of us without consultation. "I've been hearing about Casscraft in circles that matter." I waited, knowing there would be more. With my father, compliments were never just compliments. "I've been reflecting on our differences," he continued, swirling his wine with practiced precision. "Perhaps I was hasty in dismissing your business acumen. The market seems to validate your approach." This was as close to an apology as Howard Mitchell had ever offered anyone. I remained cautiously neutral, thanking him for the acknowledgement. "I've been thinking," he said, leaning forward. "Your company's reached a critical growth stage. This is precisely when many entrepreneurs make fatal mistakes. You need experienced guidance to navigate the next phase." And there it was, the actual purpose of this reconciliation. "I appreciate your concern, Dad, but we have systems in place," I replied evenly. "Systems are no substitute for seasoned judgment." His tone hardened slightly. "I'm offering to come on as a senior advisor. No salary necessary, just an appropriate equity position. My connections alone would be worth the share." When I didn't immediately agree, his expression soured. "You've always had this stubborn streak, Cassandra. It's prevented you from accepting help from those who know better." I thought of Evelyn's advice about maintaining clear boundaries. "I'll discuss it with my board," I said, knowing they would unanimously reject the idea. What followed was a carefully orchestrated campaign. Dad began showing up at industry events where Casscraft was represented, introducing himself to my business contacts as Cassandra's father and advisor. He sent unsolicited emails to my board members offering his insider perspective on company decisions. When these tactics failed to secure him a position, he escalated. Through mutual connections, he arranged a golf game with James Holloway, our lead investor and most influential board member. Over 18 holes, he systematically undermined me, suggesting I was overwhelmed by the company's growth and making concerning decisions. I only discovered this conversation when James loyally reported it to me, disgusted by the attempted manipulation, but the seed of doubt had been planted. At our next board meeting, two members questioned whether we needed more experienced leadership during our growth phase. Through careful relationship building and a solid track record of decisions, I maintained the board's confidence. But I knew this was just the opening move in my father's game. My suspicions were confirmed when Martin discovered Dad had been approaching other board members individually, building a coalition to propose a new corporate structure with himself as executive chairman and me reporting to him. The attempted corporate coup came to a head during an emergency board meeting Howard had called without my knowledge, claiming urgent fiduciary concerns. Blindsided but not unprepared, I entered the boardroom to find my father at the head of the table. "Ah, Cassandra, thank you for joining us," he said, as though he were the host. "We've been discussing the company's leadership structure." For 2 hours, I defended my leadership against a carefully constructed narrative of inexperience and impulsivity. Howard had prepared a presentation highlighting every business challenge we'd faced, framing them as failures rather than the growth pains of a scaling company. "The fundamental issue," he concluded smoothly, "is that Cassandra lacks the business instinct needed at this level. It's not her fault, it's simply a matter of experience." When he finished, I remained silent for a long moment, letting his words hang in the air. "Is that your professional assessment, Dad?" I finally asked. "Or is it what you've believed since I was 10 years old and you canceled my birthday party for Richard's soccer game?" His composure flickered momentarily. "This isn't personal, Cassandra. It's business." "Then let's talk business," I responded, opening my laptop. I presented our growth figures, successful product launches, and strategic partnerships, all decisions my father had criticized that had ultimately proven correct. I ended with the most damning evidence: emails from Howard to board members containing factually incorrect information about our financials. Either my father deliberately misrepresented our company's position, I stated calmly, or he failed to perform basic due diligence before seeking to remove the founder and CEO. Neither scenario suggests he's qualified for any leadership role. The board voted unanimously to reject Howard's proposal. As we adjourned, he gripped my arm. "You've made a serious mistake," he hissed. "No Mitchell has ever publicly humiliated family this way." "You tried to steal my company," I replied quietly. "There's nothing more personal than that." My mother called that evening, her voice brittle with controlled fury. "Your father was trying to help you," she insisted. "Men of his stature don't need the headache of saving failing businesses. He was doing you a favor." "My business isn't failing, Mom. That's the point." "Well, a daughter who respected her family wouldn't have embarrassed her father that way," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "I didn't raise you to be so selfish." The confrontation had consequences. Though I'd maintained control of my company, Howard's whisper campaign had raised concerns with potential partners. The board instituted a temporary leadership review, requiring weekly oversight of my decisions while they investigated Howard's allegations. During this difficult period, I found unexpected support from Sophia Ramirez, our corporate attorney. Unlike others who tried to remain neutral in the family conflict, Sophia recognized the pattern of systematic undermining. "I've seen this before," she told me, during a late-night strategy session. "Powerful men who can't stand successful women, especially when that woman is their daughter. We're going to protect what you've built." With Sophia's legal expertise and Evelyn's strategic guidance, I weathered the storm. But the lesson was painfully clear. My family would rather destroy my success than see me thrive independently. After surviving my father's attempted corporate coup, I understood that defending against Mitchell family attacks wasn't enough. Their campaign would continue as long as they perceived me as vulnerable. I needed a comprehensive counter-strategy, one that protected Casscraft while addressing the root of their behavior, the need to control and diminish my achievements. The board review period ended with a unanimous vote of confidence in my leadership. We implemented new governance structures designed to prevent future interference, including a clause specifically prohibiting family members from serving in any company capacity without board approval. With Evelyn and Sophia as my trusted advisors, I began methodically documenting the pattern of family sabotage. We created a secure file containing evidence of each incident from Richard's industrial espionage to Jennifer's embezzlement to Howard's attempted takeover. These records weren't for legal action, but for protection against future gaslighting and manipulation. Your family has a playbook, Sophia observed during one strategy session. They undermine, then deny, then blame you for reacting. Breaking that cycle requires changing your responses. Rather than angry confrontations that played into their narrative of me as unstable, I adopted a new approach: polite disengagement with clear boundaries. When Richard attempted to corner me at a charity function to discuss the misunderstanding with the board, I simply smiled and said, "There's nothing to discuss. I hope you enjoy the event," then walked away. This new strategy extended to business as well. Richard had positioned himself as a networking kingmaker in our industry, often using social occasions to remind others of my supposed inexperience or lucky breaks. Rather than directly challenging these narratives, I focused on building stronger relationships independently, letting my company's success speak for itself. Meanwhile, Casscraft was developing a revolutionary manufacturing process that would reduce water usage by 70% compared to industry standards. We maintained unprecedented secrecy around this innovation, compartmentalizing information even within our team. Only 5 people knew the complete details, none named Mitchell. As our product development continued in secret, I noticed my family's behavior shift from active sabotage to information gathering. Mom began calling regularly with suspiciously specific questions about my business plans. Dad suddenly invited me to golf with his associates, something he'd never done previously. They sense something's happening but can't identify what, Evelyn noted during our monthly strategy lunch. That uncertainty makes them nervous. The industry's annual calendar revolved around the prestigious Eco-Innovation Gala, the year-end event where major announcements were made and next year's trends established. Richard had served on the event committee for 3 years, leveraging his corporate connections despite his company's minimal commitment to sustainability. In early October, Richard began posting about the upcoming gala on social media. "Looking forward to hosting key decision-makers at the most exclusive industry event of the year," he wrote, tagging several prominent executives. The underlying message was clear. He controlled access to this critical networking opportunity. For years, Casscraft had received only minimal representation at the gala, usually a single ticket at an obscure table. This year, with our dramatic growth and innovation, I expected that to change. I was wrong. When the invitations were distributed, my company received none. Inquiries to the committee were met with vague references to space limitations and focusing on established industry leaders. The situation became clear during the October family dinner I reluctantly attended. As dessert was served, Richard casually mentioned the gala's record attendance. "Everyone who matters will be there," he said, glancing at me with barely concealed satisfaction. "The waiting list is impressive." "Will Casscraft be represented?" my mother asked with manufactured innocence. Richard's smile tightened. The committee had to make difficult decisions this year. We prioritized companies with proven long-term commitment to the industry. "Meaning companies run by people you approve of," I said evenly. "Meaning companies with appropriate professional standards," he countered. "You're not classy enough for the year-end party, Cass. Some doors only open for those who understand how business really works." The table fell silent, awaiting my reaction, the anger or hurt that would confirm their narrative about my temperament. Instead, I smiled genuinely for the first time that evening. "My party's somewhere else," I replied calmly. Richard's expression shifted from smugness to wariness. He'd expected either submission or explosion, not this quiet confidence. For the first time, he seemed to realize he might not have full visibility into my plans. What Richard and my family didn't know was that, for the past year, while they were focused on undermining my current business, I had been quietly laying groundwork for something that would redefine the industry. The water conservation manufacturing process was only part of a larger initiative we called the Full Circle Sustainability Framework. While Richard had been collecting symbolic committee positions, I'd been building relationships with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Sustainable Manufacturing Coalition, and 3 international certification bodies. These partnerships weren't announced in press releases or social media posts. They were developed through consistent action and shared values. Richard's gala exclusion gave me the perfect opportunity to finalize the plan I'd been developing for months. An alternative industry event focused on substantive innovation rather than networking pretense. We would launch our manufacturing breakthrough there, alongside a comprehensive sustainability certification program developed in partnership with environmental leaders. As I left that family dinner, I felt a strange sense of gratitude toward Richard. His petty exclusion had freed me from the last lingering desire for Mitchell family approval. I didn't need their validation, their connections, or their acceptance. I had something far more valuable, a vision entirely my own and the courage to pursue it. In the months following Richard's smug gala exclusion, I operated on 2 distinct tracks. Publicly, I maintained the image of a focused CEO working on gradual company expansion, occasionally appearing at industry events but never drawing undue attention. This visible Cassandra Mitchell was exactly what my family expected to see someone working hard, but still operating within their definition of limited potential. Behind this carefully maintained facade, however, a much more ambitious plan was unfolding. The hidden campaign had actually begun a year earlier, after Jennifer's embezzlement attempt convinced me that half measures wouldn't suffice. My family wouldn't stop until they either controlled my success or destroyed it, which meant I needed a decisive victory that would place Casscraft permanently beyond their reach. Our revolutionary water conservation manufacturing process formed the technological cornerstone of this strategy. Traditional production methods in our industry consumed between 8 to 12 gallons of water per unit. Our new system reduced that to less than 2 gallons while improving product quality. The environmental impact was significant enough to completely reframe industry standards. But technology alone wouldn't be enough. I needed institutional support that even the Mitchell family connections couldn't undermine. Working through Evelyn's network, I'd arranged private meetings with the leadership of Global Earth, the most respected environmental advocacy organization in our sector. Their endorsement carried weight that no amount of social maneuvering could diminish. "What you're developing isn't just a competitive advantage," said Diana Reynolds, Global Earth Certification Director, during our 4th confidential meeting. "It's potentially an industry inflection point. We want to build our new manufacturing standards around your process." This partnership remained completely confidential, known only to my most trusted team members. Externally, we described the ongoing meetings as routine compliance consultations. Meanwhile, we were actually developing an entirely new certification framework that would become the industry gold standard. The third component of my strategy involved media relationships cultivated quietly over months. Rather than splashy press releases, I built personal connections with key environmental and business journalists, providing them exclusive background information on sustainability challenges. These reporters didn't yet know what we were developing, but they were primed to recognize its significance when announced. By early November, carefully constructed information leaks began appearing in industry publications. Rumors of a potentially game-changing announcement coming before year-end, speculation about revolutionary manufacturing processes being developed by unnamed sources. I ensured these rumors never directly mentioned Casscraft, instead allowing industry analysts to speculate about which major corporation might be behind the innovation. The strategy worked perfectly. Richard began texting me with thinly veiled fishing expeditions. "Hearing interesting industry rumors. Anything I should know about?" During family gatherings, Conversation repeatedly turned to major developments various family members had insider knowledge about, with pointed looks to gauge my reaction. I've heard Great Lake Products is announcing something significant, Dad mentioned during Thanksgiving dinner, naming our largest competitor. Robert Chambers told me they've been working on something revolutionary for months. How interesting, I replied noncommittally, taking a sip of wine to hide my smile. Robert Chambers was among the CEOs who had received a confidential preview of our technology 3 weeks earlier, signing rigorous non-disclosure agreements in the process. If he was feeding misinformation to my father, it meant our strategy of controlled information was working exactly as planned. Richard's anxiety became increasingly evident as December approached. He cornered me in the kitchen during that same Thanksgiving gathering. "Look, Cass, I know we've had our differences, but we're still family," he began, his tone uncharacteristically conciliatory. "If you're working on something big, I could help position it properly at the gala. It's not too late to secure you an invitation." "That's thoughtful, Richard, but unnecessary," I replied. "I'm focused on our existing product lines right now. The gala sounds wonderful, though I'm sure you'll represent the family admirably." His eyes narrowed slightly, unconvinced by my casual dismissal. "You've been meeting with Diana Reynolds from Global Earth," he said, watching for my reaction. "That's not about existing product lines." So he had been monitoring my movements. Interesting. "Diana and I serve on a sustainability committee together," I answered truthfully, but incompletely. "We have regular meetings." Richard's frustration was evident in his tightening jaw. For years, he had been able to track my business activities through family connections and social networks. Now, critical pieces were missing from his intelligence, and the uncertainty clearly unnerved him. The parental information gathering efforts intensified as December progressed. Mom began dropping by my office unannounced just to say hello, wandering around with 2 casual questions about any exciting developments. Dad suddenly took interest in my company's patent applications, offering unsolicited advice about protecting intellectual property. I maintained the same strategy throughout: polite engagement without substantive disclosure. Each interaction confirmed they sensed something significant developing, but couldn't identify specifics, exactly the information asymmetry I needed. The family's desperation culminated in their most egregious boundary violation yet. During a routine security review, our IT director discovered sophisticated attempts to access our server from external locations. The attack signatures weren't random. They targeted specific folders related to our development projects and executive communications. Digital forensics traced the attempts to a private investigation firm frequently used by Mitchell Financial Group, my father's company. When confronted at Sunday dinner, Dad denied direct involvement while simultaneously justifying the actions. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he said smoothly. Then, without missing a beat, "Though frankly, if someone did investigate, it would simply be prudent family oversight. You've been behaving erratically, making secretive business moves without consulting those with your best interests at heart." Mom nodded in agreement. "We worry about you, darling. You've always needed guidance to prevent impulsive decisions. Accessing private business servers isn't family oversight," I replied calmly. "It's corporate espionage, potentially criminal, and definitely the end of any information sharing going forward." I left immediately afterward, instructing our security team to implement additional protections against both digital and physical intrusion attempts. The lines had been clearly drawn now. The Mitchells considered my business their territory, regardless of legal boundaries or ownership realities. As December progressed, Richard's gala preparations dominated family conversations. He detailed the influential attendees, the strategic seating arrangements, the planned announcements from major companies. The subtext was always the same. This was the inner circle of industry influence, and I remained firmly outside it. What he couldn't know was that 26 of those influential attendees had already confirmed their participation in our alternative event, scheduled for the same evening as his precious gala. While Richard focused on protecting his exclusive party, I had been building something with actual industry-changing potential. With 3 weeks until the competing events, everything was prepared. The only remaining question was how long we could maintain the element of surprise and whether the Mitchell family might make one final desperate attempt to derail what they couldn't control. Just 4 weeks before our planned event, I received an urgent call from our operations director, Melissa. Her voice was tight, with barely controlled panic. "The Environmental Compliance Agency is here," she said. "A full inspection team, completely unannounced. They're demanding access to everything: manufacturing floor, chemical storage, water treatment systems, all documentation." My stomach dropped. ECA inspections typically occurred with advance notice, unless triggered by specific concerns. An unscheduled full facility inspection suggested something more deliberate than random oversight. "I'm on my way," I said, already gathering my things. "Don't let them into the prototype area without proper clearance verification." When I arrived 30 minutes later, 6 inspectors in official jackets were systematically examining our facility. Their team leader, a stern woman named Director Hammond, handed me a document citing anonymous reports of hazardous waste discharge violations. "We take all environmental compliance very seriously," I said, maintaining professional composure while my mind raced. "Casscraft has always exceeded regulatory requirements in every jurisdiction." "That will be determined by our inspection," she replied coolly. For 3 days, the inspectors scrutinized every aspect of our operation while production halted completely. They collected water samples, reviewed 2 years of documentation, and interviewed staff. The disruption couldn't have come at a worse time. We were finalizing production of demonstration units for our launch event while completing certification requirements with Global Earth. On day 3, I received a text from an unfamiliar number. "Regulatory problems can be devastating for small companies. Perhaps reconsider your approach before it's too late." The unnamed sender was clear enough. This was Richard's work, likely through contacts at his corporation's regulatory compliance division. The inspection wasn't random, but targeted, designed to disrupt our operations at this critical juncture. Understanding the source didn't solve our immediate problem. Even with perfect compliance, the inspection created significant delays. Our production schedule was derailed, and partners were becoming nervous about the sudden regulatory attention. When the inspectors finally departed on day 4, without citing violations but promising continued monitoring, the damage was already substantial. Our manufacturing timeline had been compressed beyond reasonable limits. Key personnel were exhausted from the inspection demands, and investor confidence was shaken. Martin, our CFO, delivered the financial assessment grimly. "We need to delay the launch event." The additional costs from the shutdown, plus the accelerated production schedule, would drain our operating capital to dangerous levels. "Delaying isn't an option," I replied. "Richard's gala is December 15th. Our event has to happen simultaneously for maximum impact." "Then we need immediate capital," Martin insisted. "At least $300,000 to cover the shortfall and emergency production costs." Our options were limited. Approaching institutional investors would take too long and reveal too much about our plans. Bank loans would require disclosures we couldn't afford to make public. That left personal resources. I liquidated my retirement account and took a second mortgage on my condo, securing just enough capital to keep the plan on track. The financial strain was enormous, but the alternative, allowing my family to derail everything we'd built, was unacceptable. As we recovered from the inspection disruption, another Mitchell attack emerged from an unexpected direction. My assistant forwarded an email that had been sent to our entire leadership team. A wedding announcement for Nathan Parker, my ex-fiancé from 6 years earlier, and his new bride. The timing seemed odd until I scrolled down and saw the final paragraph. "Nathan will be joining Mitchell Financial Group as Vice President of Sustainable Investments, bringing his unique insights from his previous relationship with Casscraft Designs founder Cassandra Mitchell." Nathan and I had dated for 2 years, ending shortly after Cascraft's founding when he pressed for partial ownership despite contributing nothing to the business. He had been privy to early business plans and strategy discussions. Though the information was outdated, he possessed enough insider knowledge to sound credible to those unfamiliar with our current operations. A quick investigation confirmed my mother had orchestrated this move. Social media photos showed Patricia Mitchell attending Nathan's engagement party months earlier, something impossible without deliberate reconnection efforts. She had systematically rebuilt a relationship with my ex, specifically to deploy him against me at this critical moment. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. Nathan had known my dreams and vulnerabilities in ways even my family hadn't. His willingness to weaponize that intimate knowledge felt like a violation beyond business rivalry. When he called me directly, his tone was simultaneously apologetic and threatening. "This isn't personal, Cass. Your family just recognized my value in ways you never did. I hoped we could find an amicable arrangement before things escalate further." "What exactly are you threatening, Nathan?" "Not threatening, offering perspective. I remember every conversation about your early business plans, your supplier relationships, your growth strategy. Information your family finds valuable enough to compensate generously." "That information is 6 years outdated," I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. "The foundations haven't changed," he countered smoothly. "You're still the same Cassandra, making the same fundamental decisions, predictable to those who truly know you." The implications were clear. He was feeding my family psychological insights about my decision-making patterns, allowing them to anticipate my business moves in ways generic corporate intelligence couldn't match. This latest betrayal, combined with the financial strain from the inspection and the compressed timeline, created the perfect storm of pressure. For the first time since starting Cascraft, I seriously questioned whether I should continue fighting. Late that night, alone in my office staring at spreadsheets that refused to balance and timelines that seemed impossible to meet, I called Evelyn. It was nearly midnight, but she answered immediately. "I don't think I can do this," I admitted, voice breaking. "They keep finding new ways to attack, and I'm running out of resources to defend." Evelyn was silent for a moment before responding. "Do you know why I first approached you at that conference 3 years ago?" The question surprised me. "You said you liked my question about company culture." "That was part of it," she acknowledged. "But mainly I saw myself 40 years ago, a woman with vision being systematically undermined by people who claimed to love her." She then shared something she'd never mentioned in our years of mentorship. Her own father and brothers had sabotaged her first company, convinced she needed to be protected from herself. They had driven it to bankruptcy, then offered to rescue her with positions in the family business. "I gave up that first time," Evelyn said quietly. "Spent 15 years working under my brother's supervision before starting over at 43. Don't make my mistake, Cassandra. The regret lasts longer than the struggle." Her story provided the perspective I desperately needed. This wasn't just about a business competition or family dynamics. It was about claiming the right to chart my own course without manipulation or control. The next morning, I called an emergency leadership meeting. "We're not delaying or scaling back," I announced. "We're pivoting to turn these attacks into advantages." We redesigned our launch strategy to incorporate the regulatory inspection as evidence of our transparency. We accelerated certification with Global Earth to establish credibility beyond what Nathan's outdated information could undermine. We adjusted production schedules to focus on demonstration units rather than full inventory. Most importantly, we developed a narrative that reframed the entire situation. The industry needed transformation not just in products but in practices. The old networks, represented by exclusive events like Richard's Gala, were giving way to collaborative innovation focused on actual environmental impact rather than social positioning. When a journalist asked about the timing of our event coinciding with the traditional gala, I gave an answer that would later be quoted extensively. "The future of sustainability isn't determined by who attends which party. It's built by those willing to prioritize impact over inclusion in exclusive circles." The quote spread rapidly through industry channels. creating exactly the narrative contrast we needed. As interest in our event grew, Richard's gala, despite its prestigious attendee list, began to seem like a symbol of outdated industry approaches. 3 weeks before the competing events, we had not only recovered from the near defeat, but strengthened our position through the very challenges designed to break us. The Mitchell family had inadvertently forced us to create a more resilient strategy and compelling narrative than we might have otherwise developed. Their attacks had nearly succeeded, but in rising above them, we'd created something stronger than our original vision. The week of the competing events arrived with a palpable tension in the industry. Richard's Eco-Innovation Gala had been the unchallenged centerpiece of the calendar for years, the place where deals were made, partnerships announced, and social capital exchanged. Our alternative event, which we'd named the Futurecraft Summit, represented a direct challenge to that established order. While Richard focused on luxurious details, custom ice sculptures, celebrity appearances, exclusive gift bags, our team concentrated on substance. The summit venue, a renovated industrial warehouse, showcased sustainable architecture and circular design principles. Every element from the plant-based catering to the hemp fiber lanyards demonstrated practical applications of environmental consciousness. 3 days before the events, industry publications began reporting a curious trend. Several prominent CEOs had scheduling conflicts preventing their attendance at the gala. Others were sending deputies rather than appearing personally. The carefully curated exclusivity Richard had used as a weapon was beginning to work against him as momentum shifted toward our solutions-focused alternative. My brother's increasing desperation manifested in frantic texts and calls. "Whatever you're planning, it's not too late to coordinate," one message read. "We could present a united Mitchell front at the gala. I could arrange for you to make a brief announcement." I didn't respond. After years of undermining and sabotage, his sudden interest in collaboration was transparently self-serving. The shift in power dynamics was clearly destabilizing his sense of control. The morning before our respective events, I received an unexpected alert from our IT security team. Someone had attempted an extensive breach of our company servers, specifically targeting presentation files and attendee information for the summit. The attack signature matched previous attempts traced to Mitchell Financial Group's contractors. Unlike earlier, more subtle approaches, this attack was blunt and desperate, suggesting Richard had abandoned caution in favor of last-minute sabotage. Our enhanced security systems had prevented any data loss, but the attempt itself represented a significant escalation. Rather than sending a cease and desist letter that would be ignored, I decided on a more direct approach. I drove to Richard's downtown office building and had reception inform him of my arrival. His surprise was evident when he appeared in the lobby 20 minutes later. "This is unexpected," he said with forced casualness, finally reconsidering my offer of collaboration. "I'm here about the server attack," I replied quietly. "It stops now, Richard." His expression flickered between denial and defiance. "I have no idea what you're talking about. We both know that's not true. The digital fingerprints match your previous attempts. The difference is that this time we have complete documentation that's been filed with our attorneys in sealed contingency packets." This was partially a bluff. We had evidence but hadn't yet filed legal documentation. Richard, however, had no way to verify this. "Even if such an attack occurred, which I'm not admitting, connecting it to me would be impossible," he countered, lowering his voice. "Corporate security is complex." "Richard, for once in your life, listen to what I'm actually saying," I said, maintaining steady eye contact. "I don't need to prove anything in court to devastate your reputation. If another attack occurs, those packets get opened, and the evidence goes to every board member at your company and every journalist in the industry." Something in my tone finally penetrated his usual armor of denial. For perhaps the first time, he truly saw me not as his little sister playing at business, but as a formidable opponent who had anticipated his moves and prepared accordingly. "You've changed," he said, a hint of genuine surprise in his voice. "No, Richard, I've always been this person. You just couldn't see past who you needed me to be." As I turned to leave, he called after me, "Why are you doing this, Cass? Why couldn't you just accept your place in the family business? We would have taken care of you." The question revealed everything about the fundamental disconnect. "Because it was never about being taken care of," I replied. "It was about being respected for my own path, not controlled on someone else's." I left him standing in the lobby, visibly shaken by the confrontation. Later that day, our security team confirmed that all suspicious activities against our systems had ceased completely. The evening of the parallel events arrived with perfect December weather, clear skies, and unseasonably mild temperatures that seemed like a good omen. Reports from industry contacts confirmed what we'd suspected. Attendance at Richard's gala was noticeably thinner than previous years, with several key influencers conspicuously absent. Meanwhile, the Future Craft Summit exceeded our registration projections by 30%. The warehouse space hummed with energy as environmental leaders mingled with manufacturing innovators and sustainability investors. The collaborative atmosphere represented exactly the industry transformation we'd envisioned. My presentation was scheduled for 8:30 p.m., deliberately aligned with the timing of major announcements at Richard's gala. As I prepared backstage, I received an unexpected text from Jennifer. "Mom and Dad are furious. Richard's panicking. Whatever you've done, it's working. Be careful." The warning was cryptic, but suggested the Mitchell family was planning some final countermove. I instructed our team to remain vigilant while proceeding as planned. Taking the stage before the assembled industry leaders felt like the culmination of years of struggle, not just against business challenges, but against the constant undermining from those who should have been most supportive. The journey had forced me to build strengths I might never have developed otherwise. Traditional manufacturing has treated environmental impact as a necessary evil to be minimized, I began. Tonight, we're introducing a fundamentally different approach, one that places sustainability at the center of the design process rather than as an afterthought. For the next 20 minutes, I detailed our water conservation manufacturing system, the Full Circle Sustainability Framework, and our partnership with Global Earth to establish new industry certification standards. The presentation culminated in a demonstration of our technology that visibly impressed the audience of industry veterans. As I concluded to enthusiastic applause, Diana Reynolds from Global Earth joined me on stage for the formal announcement of their certification endorsement, an unprecedented validation from the industry's most respected environmental authority. "This isn't just an incremental improvement," Diana told the audience. "It's a paradigm shift in how manufacturing accountability is measured and reported. We're proud to establish our next-generation standards around Casscraft's innovations." Social media exploded with coverage of our announcement, with industry influencers sharing real-time updates from the summit. Number Futurecraft began trending nationwide, while Richard's Gala received only periodic mentions from official corporate accounts. The contrast became even more pronounced when a prominent industry publication posted side-by-side coverage. Our warehouse filled with engaged participants having substantive discussions versus Richard's half-empty ballroom where attendees appeared to be checking their phones for updates on our event. As the evening progressed, I received word that Richard had abruptly left his own gala after seeing the social media coverage of our announcement. His carefully orchestrated evening had been completely overshadowed, his position as industry gatekeeper effectively neutralized. Near midnight, as our event wound down with continuing conversations among excited participants, I stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The path to this triumph had been longer and harder than it should have been, filled with betrayals from those who should have been most supportive. Yet in forcing me to fight for every step forward, they had ultimately strengthened both me and my vision. For the first time since starting Casscraft, I felt completely free of the need for Mitchell family approval. Their opinion, whether praise or criticism, had become irrelevant to my sense of accomplishment. The validation that mattered came from partners who shared my values and vision, not from those who sought to control or diminish them. As I watched attendees departing with enthusiastic conversations still in progress, I realized we had created something more significant than a successful business event. We had established a new model for industry collaboration, one built on substantive innovation rather than exclusive access. Richard's classy party had served its purpose for years by maintaining established hierarchies and gatekeeping practices. Our alternative demonstrated that genuine impact could attract more meaningful participation than social positioning ever could. The industry was ready for transformation, and we had provided both the technical innovation and the cultural framework to support it. When my phone buzzed with an incoming call from my parents' number just after midnight, I silenced it without hesitation. Whatever reaction they were having to the evening's developments could wait. This moment belonged to those who had supported the journey, not those who had repeatedly tried to derail it. Number. Part 10. Triumph and Transformation. The morning after the competing events, industry news told the story more dramatically than I could have anticipated. Sustainable manufacturing disrupted. Future Craft Summit redefines industry standards, headlined the top trade publication, while Richard's gala received only a brief mention in the social calendar section. Financial analysts were already issuing updated guidances for companies in our sector, citing the new certification standards as game-changing competitive criteria. My phone overflowed with congratulatory messages and partnership inquiries. Conspicuously absent were any communications from my family after that midnight call I'd declined to answer. The silence continued through the following week as our announcement generated 3 times the media coverage we'd projected. Casscraft's stock value doubled within 10 days of the summit as investors recognized the competitive advantage our technology represented. The board approved an expanded manufacturing facility to meet anticipated demand, and 6 major competitors requested licensing discussions for our water conservation system. In the midst of this professional triumph, I experienced an unexpected moment of empathy. During a morning news segment about industry innovators, the camera briefly captured Richard in the background of an unrelated event. He looked diminished somehow, the customary confidence replaced by a wary uncertainty. For a fleeting moment, I felt sorry for him, recognizing how his identity had been built around a status and influence that was rapidly becoming obsolete. The Mitchell family's public silence broke 3 weeks after the summit, when Jennifer unexpectedly appeared at my office. Unlike our previous interactions, she seemed genuinely different, less polished, more authentic. "I'm not here with any agenda," she said immediately. "Mom and Dad don't know I'm here, and Richard would probably disown me if he found out." We sat in my office, the afternoon sun highlighting how exhausted she looked. "The family is imploding," she continued. "Richard blames Dad for not controlling you earlier. Dad blames Mom for not raising you properly. Mom blames everyone else for not appreciating her sacrifices." Jennifer gave a tired laugh. "Meanwhile, no one is actually talking about what really happened, that you built something remarkable while they were busy trying to tear you down." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because I need to apologize," she replied, meeting my eyes directly. "Not just for the embezzlement, which was unforgivable, but for every time I stayed silent when they mistreated you. For every time I chose their approval over doing what was right." The apology felt different from previous family manipulations. There was no request attached, no subtle pressure for reconciliation or access. "What do you want, Jennifer?" "Nothing from you," she said simply. "I'm finally doing the therapy I should have started years ago. Breaking away from their influence. I don't expect forgiveness or trust I haven't earned either. I just needed you to know that at least one Mitchell recognizes what they did to you was wrong." We talked for another hour, the first honest conversation we'd had as adults. Jennifer had begun the difficult process of disentangling her identity from family expectations, inspired partly by watching my journey from a distance. She had moved to a small apartment, started working at a nonprofit, and was slowly building an independent life. As she prepared to leave, she hesitated. "They'll never admit it, but you terrify them, Cass. Not because you oppose them, but because you proved them wrong. Their entire worldview depends on believing they know best, that their way is the only way to succeed. You've demonstrated an alternative they can't reconcile with their beliefs." Her insight crystallized something I'd felt but never fully articulated. The Mitchell family's opposition had never been just about control. It was about preserving a narrative in which their approach to life was not just preferable but necessary. My success challenged not just their authority, but their fundamental understanding of how the world worked. Over the following months, I developed a cautious friendship with Jennifer. Our relationship required clear boundaries and candid communication, but her genuine effort to change created space for possible reconciliation. Unlike my parents and Richard, who continued to view relationships as transactional, Jennifer was learning to value connection for its own sake. The professional momentum from the summit continued through the following spring. Casscraft's leadership in sustainable manufacturing attracted top talent from competitors, and our company culture became known for collaborative innovation rather than hierarchical control. This success allowed me to launch an initiative I'd been contemplating since the summit: the Autonomous Foundation, a business mentorship program specifically designed for entrepreneurs facing unsupportive family dynamics. The foundation provided not just financial resources, but psychological support and practical strategies for maintaining boundaries while building successful ventures. Family resistance to entrepreneurship isn't just a personal challenge, it's a significant economic obstacle, I explained during the foundation's launch event. How many innovative businesses never materialize because potential founders are undermined by those closest to them? How many transformative ideas die because an entrepreneur can't overcome both market challenges and family sabotage simultaneously? The program resonated more widely than I'd anticipated, revealing how common such experiences were across industries and backgrounds. Participants shared stories with painful similarities to my own journey, from subtle undermining to active sabotage by family members threatened by independent success. 6 months after the summit, I attended my first major industry event as a keynote speaker. As I prepared backstage, I glanced into the audience and unexpectedly spotted Richard seated near the back. He had recently taken a position with a mid-tier competitor after his previous firm underwent restructuring, a significant step down from his former prominence. Our eyes met briefly across the distance, and he gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Not friendship or reconciliation, but perhaps a reluctant recognition of reality. I returned the gesture before focusing on my presentation. My keynote addressed the industry's transition from competitive gatekeeping to collaborative innovation. The sustainable manufacturing sector faces challenges too complex for any single company to solve in isolation, I told the audience. Our future depends not on exclusive access, but on inclusive problem solving that values diverse perspectives and approaches. The enthusiastic response confirmed how thoroughly the industry landscape had transformed in just 6 months. The principles we'd championed at the summit had become mainstream, while the exclusionary practices Richard's gala represented were increasingly viewed as outdated and ineffective. After the presentation, Richard approached me in the networking area. "Congratulations on the keynote," he said stiffly. "Your water conservation system is impressive." Coming from Richard, this grudging acknowledgement represented an extraordinary concession. "Thank you," I replied simply. "I still think you could have achieved similar results through established channels," he added, unable to completely abandon his position. "The confrontational approach wasn't necessary." "It wasn't confrontational, Richard. It was independent. There's a difference." He seemed about to argue further, but instead asked, "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you'd joined the family business as Dad wanted? If we had worked together instead of against each other?" The question seemed genuinely reflective rather than manipulative, perhaps the first honest inquiry he'd ever made about my choices. "No," I answered truthfully, "because that path would have required becoming someone I'm not." Success isn't about which party you attend, Richard. It's about creating spaces where everyone can thrive in their own way. As I watched him walk away, I realized the Mitchell family no longer held power over my sense of self or purpose. The approval I'd once desperately sought had become irrelevant to my happiness or success. The painful journey through their betrayals had ultimately led to a freedom more valuable than their acceptance could ever have been. That evening, I called Evelyn to share the interaction with Richard and my reflections on the journey. "You know what amazes me most about your story?" she said after listening. "It's not just that you succeeded despite their opposition, it's that you created something better because of it. Their attempts to control you forced you to envision alternatives that might never have emerged otherwise." Her observation captured the most unexpected aspect of my journey. The family dynamics that had caused so much pain had also catalyzed innovation that benefited an entire industry. In trying to force me into their limited definition of success, they had inadvertently pushed me to reimagine success itself. The path forward wasn't about revenge or vindication, but about continuing to build something meaningful on my own terms. The greatest triumph wasn't proving my family wrong, it was creating a reality where their approval had become irrelevant to my sense of purpose and fulfillment. If you've ever had someone underestimate you or try to dim your light, I hope this story reminds you that sometimes the greatest motivation comes from proving yourself right rather than proving others wrong. Have you ever turned someone's doubt into your driving force? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that success often looks different than others expect. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, the most powerful party is always the one you create for yourself.